In the demo scenario, I have a very normal scenario where I have a on-prem application which has basically a customer database with set of customers, and then product with set of products, and then um, you can make a sale of this product online and offline, right? So BizTalk is basically a middleware integration tool which allows you to integrate with different kind of heterogeneous application. What does that mean is different kind of transport protocol and different kind of message type as well. So I have just built one um application, very straightforward application where there is a sales record coming offline, and that's coming to BizTalk, and BizTalk is processing it using WCF SQL adapter to insert the record into the sales ID. And if the record is successfully inserted into the sales table, it will return you a sales ID saying that a record has been successfully inserted. And then I will show you how we can leverage the for example, Rian was mentioning like we have a lot of Azure services which Microsoft says the secret sauce in the market. So how can we leverage the Azure services, for example, cognitive services in Logic App and then back here in our BizTalk application. So for example, um, let me show you a sample file which I will use. Um, this is a sample record file where you mention these three, four things like which product it is for which and which customer you sold to. And then there are two more things, customer rating and customer feedback, right? So the first application which I had created, which was without logic app adapter, that just take this sales record and insert it into the SQL Server database, and that application looked like something like this. So you guys are already familiar with BizTalk. So this is the orchestration where it takes the message and then convert it into the SQL schema and insert it. Once you got the successful, it gives you the acknowledgement. That's fine. So I will directly move to the next thing, which is using the logic app adapter because that's the new thing. What we can do using that. So this is the logic app adapter. So now let's say the customer is sending a feedback and I want to see the sentiment of the feedback, the text, what kind of sentiment I am getting. And depending on that sentiment, I want to take some action. Maybe I want to send them an email if the sentiment is not good, or maybe I want to do some kind of other alerts or other analytics, right? So what I'm doing here in this next application is once the record is inserted, um, I am constructing a message which is basically a JSON message which will have the customer feedback, and this message would be sent to Logic App, which basically checks the sentiment. So let me first show you the Logic App, how it works, and then how I can integrate it here using the Logic App adapter. This is the Logic App. Logic App, as Ryan mentioned, is basically an orchestration engine in cloud. It allows you to connect uh, different application using a connector concept called connector, which is basically a API, and you can create a workflow in cloud. So if you see this, uh, so if you go for logic apps, it gives you a designer where you can, all these things are called as connector. This can be a trigger. So if the request is coming, the first shape, the first connector can be triggered because it invokes your workflow. And then the corresponding can be called as action, or custom connector depending on what you're using. So here we have a very simple logic app where I am receiving a request using a request trigger. This trigger allows you to receive a JSON message over a URL. So once you create this workflow and save it, it basically generates a URL which you can use to send your request message using HTTP post. So this to define the message, you can use JSON schema here. So I'm using a very simple, let me show you. I use Postman to check the services. This is one of my favorite tool. So, so this is a very simple text. So I want to send this text and see what is the sentiment, right? So this text will go there. To send this text, I can generate JSON schema, and that JSON schema has been used here. And then these two are the uh, cognitive service. These are the text analytics API from the cognitive service, Microsoft Cognitive Service. So basically, it has multiple feature. Like the couple of features I have used here. One is called detect sentiments. It basically gives you a number which will be like 0 point something. So it will be between 1 and 0. So if it is near to 1, that means it's a good sentiment. If it is near to 0, that means it's not good sentiment. And key phrases is it will detect the key words which you are talking about in the sentence. So I have used these two. These just takes the and this takes as a these are basically API which takes the text as parameter, and then they in response they give the score for the detect sentiment, and this one it will return you a array of words. And then I am just composing a output where I'm saying, okay, these are the key phrases and these are their score. And then there is a response which using which I can send the response back to the caller. So this is a pretty simple logic app, and the
Yeah,
way.
yeah. This is Chris. Can I just interrupt for one
Sure, sure,
second? I
sure.
just want to make sure I understand
Hmm.
exactly what's going on here.
Okay.
So to me, this looks like you're using Azure to expose kind of pretty much some sort of API where you can post data to, and you're visually designing. And right now, I'm assuming we're not using BizTalk at all for this part, but just purely exposing a URL that you can post data to, and somehow without using Visual Studio, almost creating some sort of code that goes out and just takes advantage of the cognitive services in Azure. Is that more or less what you're doing?
Exactly, you're correct. So so basically what you are seeing is a visual designer view. You also have a code view, which is a JSON code. So if you want, you can come here and you can update or do some changes here. So you have got both the things. This is a declarative language, which is a new language for logic app. So you can either use you can use designer or you can use this also.
Yeah, just
Okay,
a note
so
to that.
yep.
Sorry, go ahead. What I wanted to say is this capabilities, although this designer is what Gautam is showing is in Azure, this is available in Visual Studio as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of follow up. What's the advantage of doing this versus just writing a quick application or a quick web API using the same, I would say, just importing, the Azure Cognitive Services library and using that. What's some of the use cases for using one versus the other approach?
Yeah, that's a very great question. So if you see, I mean, the first question same came to my mind. Why can't I go and just write a simple web API by myself? So again, that would be your custom code which you need to write and do the things. Definitely you can do this, but here you can do this in minutes, right? Because here you need not to write any single line of code. And the other thing is it is very, very scalable. So now you just uses two, say, for example, I don't want to use these two. I just want to use detect sentiment. I can remove it directly, right? Or maybe I want to use this and maybe I want to use vision API or speech API also, right? So the flexibility and the scalability is far, far more here than you if you go and write your web API, which is again a custom code. Does that
Yes,
answer your
correct.
question?
So yeah, so just to add to that, you can do anything with custom code at the end of the day. So this is basically build versus run type scenario. So you could build your own web API to consume the Sentiment API or any cloud-based API for that matter. However, you're going to be responsible for hosting that. You can potentially host it on Azure as well if you wanted to, and then have the hybrid connector, talk to it. But you have the capabilities here out of the box in a fully scalable environment, a fully configurable environment. It's a graphical user interface, that's easy and accessible to end users to create at the end of the day. So there are some, there are some advantages of doing it this way versus the, older roll your own code type approach.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right. So to test this, as we have a URL here, we can go and use any of the tool like Postman. So I'm just trying to pass this message and see what the result comes. So if you see, it says key phrases are customer service and great product. And then the sentiment, it shows 0.80, which is good. If I say if it is a, bad or whatever is not, is bad, and it went off to 0.3. So that's just the API. Now, if we go back to the logic app, we can see, we can confirm that actually the request came here and it invoked the workflow and how the workflow ran. So if I go here, I can see the summary. So if you can see here, there are two record. If I click on that, it shows me the details, like the request came here and then it executed all these actions, and finally it sent the response back. Right? So this is a very small logic app in the Azure, which is doing some kind of test, some kind of sentiment analysis. Uh, Now I want to use this service in my BizTalk using Logic App Adapter, right? And I took this scenario because it makes sense to, without reading the customer feedback, passing this feedback through this kind of service, I can know the sentiment, how the feedbacks are coming, right? So now to use this in BizTalk using Logic App Adapter, we need to use Logic App Adapter and we need to configure it. So if I go here, this is the application and this is the adapter. So first you need to install the Logic App Adapter. It comes standalone, and once you install that, you should be able to see Logic App Adapter in your adapter type here. Uh, Once you select configure, uh, it basically asks you to sign into your Azure subscription account, and then it will show you what all resource group you have, and all the Logic app will list over here. And then you can select the Logic app which you want to invoke from your, or pass the message from your BizTalk application. So once I select that, automatically this URL will be populated here. I need not to copy it from the Logic app and paste it here. It will automatically populate it over here. So and since these messages are communicated in JSON, I need to have a pipeline both in sending as well as receiving, because you guys know in BizTalk we only have XML messages. So all the conversion happens at the edges. So while we are sending the message, we need to convert it into the JSON, and when we get the response back, we need to convert back it to the XML. So let's try this here. So this is the message, this is the feedback, and let's try this. Let me clean this. So I'm just putting this sample request in the in folder. This is the file adapter from where the request would be picked up, and then it will process it. It will insert it into the SQL first. Once it is successful, then we'll get the acknowledgement saying, okay, sales record processed successfully, and this is the sale ID. If I sales ID, if I go to the database, it should be there. So if I go to the sales, I should have that. So this is the one which record got inserted. Now coming back to so coming back to the sentiment analysis, now I have got the response back here. So if I open that, I can see the response here, the same response which we saw here. Again, to make sure that it has gone to the logic app, we will go to the logic app and see the run detail. So if you see 4.8, this is the one which has come, and again it has executed here. So this was a quick demo to show you like how can you leverage any Azure service in your BizTalk on-prem application.